fire department's on-duty crew receives a call that at first seems like a mistake. The address is a house on Maple Street, the very one that burned down more than a year ago. The house is listed as condemned. Inside there are only ruins, and the entrance is officially sealed. In the system, there is a note: property beyond repair. No one has been inside for a long time, but the report indicates a sharp smell, like rot. Residents of neighboring houses claim that the smell gets stronger in the evenings, and it is coming specifically from the basement of the old building. When the firefighters arrive, it is already dark outside. November, a damp, chilling wind, icy asphalt. The house stands in the shadow of trees, its facade covered in soot, the windows frameless, the walls bearing the marks of the fire. At first glance, it is an ordinary burned-out structure, long without electricity or life. But the smell is definitely there. It is thick and viscous, as if not air, but a fog saturated with decay is emerging from inside. It makes you nauseous. You want to cover your face with your sleeve. The entrance to the basement is welded shut with metal sheets. They were once welded on for safety. Now they have rusted through, and short gusts of warm air escape through the cracks. They decide to break it open, first with a crowbar, then a cutter. When the metal falls to the ground with a clang, a wave of a heavy, musty smell emanates from within. One of the firefighters coughs and says quietly, "There's something in there." A flashlight pierces the darkness. The beam glides over concrete walls, disappearing into the depths. On the floor, there is debris, charred planks, and pieces of iron. Something moves in the corner. At first, it seems like a rat, but then the shape becomes human. Someone is sitting in the shadows, motionless, but alive. A firefighter takes a step back and calls the police. The investigative team arrives an hour later. They decide to descend only in protective suits. A helmet-mounted camera records every step. The corridor is narrow, the ceiling is low, the walls are damp. The air is heavier than outside, smelling of mold and iron. On the floor are traces of old rust, and in the walls, right at human height, rings are embedded, with remnants of chains attached to them. None of this looks like a private home's basement. It seems more like a space someone used to hold people captive. Along the wall is a series of iron frames resembling cages. In some, there are remnants of fabric, torn pieces of cloth, traces of old paint. Several stains on the floor glow under ultraviolet light. This indicates contact with biological fluids, although the stains are at least a year old. With every step, the feeling intensifies. Something systematic was happening here. And then, a discovery. In the far corner, behind a broken cabinet, a man is sitting. He shows no aggression, does not try to stand up, just looks toward the light as if he cannot believe someone has come down to him. His skin is gray. His gaze is empty. His hands are trembling. When they lift him, he can barely stand on his feet. Medics note severe emaciation, atrophied muscles, and marks on his skin from prolonged friction, similar to those from restraints. He reacts to light and sound but does not respond. When a doctor asks him to say even a single word, a rasping sound like a cough comes from his throat. Later in the hospital, specialists will determine his vocal cords are damaged and there are old scars on his larynx, signs of surgery or trauma. The man has no documents, no phone, nothing to help identify who he is. His clothes are old, heavily worn, and his shoes are mismatched. A sneaker on one foot, a slipper on the other. In his pockets, there is only torn fabric and a piece of wire. Everything suggests he has spent not just months underground, but possibly longer. Investigators cordon off the house and post a guard. The basement is declared a crime scene. Outside, forensic experts, scent specialists, and medical examiners are at work. They begin to inspect every centimeter, and the more they find, the clearer it becomes. This man did not end up there by accident. The basement was used as a place of confinement. Everything was done deliberately. Soundproofing, ventilation, anchor points. The main thing is that the investigation now has a living witness, but he cannot speak. His eyes constantly follow people as if he understands what is happening but is powerless to answer or explain. While doctors fight to stabilize his condition, investigators look into who owned the house and who might have had access to the basement. Within a few days, it will become clear. This address is connected to other cases that were considered closed, and then a routine call for the fire department will turn into one of the most complex investigations in recent years. It is quiet in the hospital room. The dim light from the lamp reflects off the metal bed rails. On the bedside table are a glass of water and a pulse oximeter. The man found in the basement has still not fully regained consciousness. He does not speak, barely moves. His eyes are almost always closed. But the doctors assure them he is conscious. The police use this moment to conduct a standard procedure. They take his fingerprints. Everything is done in silence. The fingers are thin. The skin is peeling from dehydration, but the scanner still captures the pattern. A few minutes later, the data is sent to the system. An investigator stands by watching the screen. Everyone understands that this could be the key. If he was ever registered, the system should provide an answer. A few minutes of silence. Then, a match lights up on the monitor. Name: Alexei Kornev. Age: 24 years. Went missing in September of 2010. Last seen: the town of Livensk, 200 kilometers from here. Now the nameless man has a past. He has a name, a biography, a family. The police pull up the old missing person case file. Inside the folder are printed flyers with his photograph, a statement from his mother, and a report on the unsuccessful search. He disappeared after a party with his college classmates. His phone was turned off, and no signs of a struggle were found. The investigators' theories at the time: he left voluntarily, or it was an accident. No one thought he was alive. Further details emerge. Alexei is a student at a technical college, calm, without conflicts, with no criminal record. His parents are ordinary people. He worked part-time jobs, played sports, had no debts, and had never been on the police's radar. The disappearance looked random, but now, finding him in the basement, everything takes on a different meaning. It becomes clear. He did not disappear on his own. He was taken. The investigation tries to understand. Why him? No ties to the criminal world. No connections to other cases. Not a single reason why he might have been chosen. The deeper the investigators delve into his past, the more obvious it becomes. They are dealing not with the victim of a random attack, but with a part of something much larger. While experts piece together the victim's data, another team works on a parallel line of inquiry: the owners of the house. They need to find out who owned the building where he was held. According to the documents, the building is registered to a married couple, Viktor and Irina Melnikov. They bought the house in 2004 on a mortgage. Neighbors say the family seemed ordinary. The man worked as an electrician, the woman as an accountant. They were not sociable, lived quietly without any scandals. After the fire, neither of them ever reappeared. When investigators request their records, it turns out that both are listed as missing since the same year as Alexei. But in their case, no report was ever filed. No one looked for them. No one reported them missing. The neighbors thought they had simply moved away. Now it becomes clear. These people may not be victims, but the perpetrators. The basement, the cages, the chains. Everything is done neatly, systematically. This is not a spontaneous crime. This place was prepared in advance, with calculation and experience. This means the Melnikovs knew what they were doing. Now the case has names, an address, and a connection to specific people. Alexei is the only one who can tell what happened inside, but he cannot speak. So the investigation takes another path, through documents, fingerprints, and old photographs. And very soon, it will turn out that Viktor and Irina Melnikov are not just a family, but people who have disappeared from view once before, changing their names and cities. The investigation expands beyond a single city. The first inquiries are sent to other regions, and everything indicates that the basement on Maple Street is just one part of a much darker story, stretching back for years. The check on the homeowners begins the day after the basement's discovery. Inquiries are sent to several databases at once: tax, banking, insurance, social services. The goal is simple: to find out if Viktor and Irina Melnikov are alive and where they are now. The results come back almost simultaneously. The last activity on their bank accounts was recorded on the exact day of the fire. Transfers, cash withdrawals, the closing of a deposit account. After that, complete silence. No purchases, no calls, no social media logins. Even the utility payments stopped. It is as if the people simply erased their existence. The fire that destroyed the house was officially ruled an accident. At the time, the investigation was superficial. The house was considered empty. But now, after the discovery in the basement, investigators pull all the old files and order a new examination. The fire investigation laboratory goes to the scene. The remains of the structure are examined again. Beams, ash, marks on the walls. A few days later, the conclusion arrives. There was not one source of ignition, but several. And they were not connected to each other. Traces of gasoline, kerosene, and a rarer compound, a solvent used to accelerate combustion. On the walls are characteristic streaks, indicating that the liquid was applied by hand. All of this points to arson, and it was deliberate, carried out methodically, with the aim of destroying evidence. The theory of an accidental fire is completely dismissed. Investigators conclude the fire did not just coincide with the owner's disappearance. It was planned by them. The fire started from above, in the attic, and then engulfed the house around the perimeter as if someone wanted everything to burn evenly. This is a typical scenario when criminals try to destroy evidence. But what is alarming is this. During the re-examination of the rubble, no bone fragments, no remains, no signs of human presence on the upper floors are found. This means that, contrary to the old records, the owners did not burn. They left. Most likely, shortly before the arson. Now a sequence of events takes shape for the investigation. Viktor and Irina were holding Alexei in the basement. Then, realizing that everything could be exposed, they set the house on fire to cover their tracks. But something did not go according to plan. The basement turned out to be stronger than they had expected, and one person survived. When the police connect all the facts into a coherent picture, the version becomes obvious. The Melnikovs are not just the owners of a burned-down house. They are the main suspects in the case. They had a basement equipped as a place of confinement. They controlled access, held people, and used the space systematically. And when they decided to get rid of the evidence, they staged an arson and disappeared. The investigation takes on a different scale. A federal manhunt is declared for Viktor and Irina Melnikov, placing them on the national wanted list. Their photos appear in news reports and on police websites. The police established that before the fire, they tried to sell a car, withdrew a large sum of cash, and may have crossed the border under different names. Now, this is not just a mystery about a basement. It is a story about a couple who lived among ordinary people for years and then, in a single day, turned into ghosts. The investigation gets a clear direction: to find them, to understand how many more such basements there were, and who might have been in them before Alexei Korneev. The investigation extends beyond a single city, and from this moment on, the police begin to look at the map of the country with completely different eyes. After the manhunt is announced, investigators begin to dig into Viktor and Irina Melnikov's past. They need to understand who these people are, who they were, how they lived, and what could have led them to what was found in the basement. The first thing that emerges is their professions. Viktor is a long-haul truck driver, a man who disappears on trips for weeks, travels all over the country, and can be anywhere at any time. A job that provides both mobility and anonymity. His wife, Irina, is a nurse in a nursing home. Quiet, inconspicuous, and friendly according to her colleagues. She always arrived on time, was never late, and did not get into conflicts. Her employment record is impeccable. On paper, they look like an ordinary middle-class family. But the deeper the investigation looks into their ordinariness, the more the cracks become visible. Viktor has almost no contacts outside of work. Truck drivers at rest stops remember him, but without details. A man of few words, always alone. Irina also has no close friends, no social media, not even a trace of correspondence. It is as if they both deliberately avoided attention. Neighbors remember them reservedly. Someone says they always kept to themselves. They never invited anyone into their home, never went out into the yard, never socialized with anyone. Only sometimes, late at night, Viktor was seen carrying bags to the trunk of his car. He said it was trash, but no one checked. For such a quiet suburb, this behavior did not raise alarms. Everyone was used to minding their own business. In parallel, a financial audit is underway. Investigators analyze bank transactions for several months before the fire. And here, a clear pattern emerges. Premeditated steps. A week before the fire, all the cash was withdrawn from the family's accounts. The cash amounts to almost 2 million rubles. After that, the accounts were closed. During the same period, they sold off some of their property, an old car, home appliances, stocks registered in Irina's name. This is not an impulsive escape. It is a methodical disappearance, meticulously planned down to the minute. Financial analysts find another clue: the purchase of train tickets. But the names on the order are not theirs. The payment was made with a card registered to Viktor, but the registered passengers are people not listed in the passport database. Fake data. The tickets are for the south of the country to a small town near the border. After that, the trail goes cold. The investigation understands. They had a plan. They collected money, prepared the arson, and left. They have likely been living under false names for a long time. But any escape leaves traces, and they can be found not only in documents but also in belongings. Work continues in the ruins of the house. Forensic experts go through every room, sifting through the ash, documenting everything that could have survived the fire. In the basement where Alexei was found, there is a heavy metal safe. It is partially deformed, but not melted. The door is jammed, but experts open it with a blowtorch. Inside is a thick polyethylene package, protected from moisture, and in it, a stack of old photographs, Polaroids. The photos survived the fire almost undamaged, but what is depicted on them leaves the investigators in a state of silent shock. Several dozen pictures. In each one, people are sitting in cages, different faces, different rooms, but the same setting. Concrete, chains, dirty walls, dim light. Some photos were clearly taken in the basement on Maple Street, others in unknown locations. On the back of some pictures are neat dates and captions. March 2008, June 2009, October 2010. The timeline indicates that this has been going on for more than a year or two. This is not a random breakdown, not a sudden crime. It is a system that has been operating for years. Experts send the photos to the lab. The images are used to identify several missing persons whose cases were considered closed due to a lack of leads. People from different cities, different ages, with no connection to each other. And this confirms the most terrible suspicion. Alexei was not the only one. Now the investigation has physical evidence. The Melnikovs were not acting for the first time. The basement on Maple Street is just one point in a long chain of disappearances. And behind every picture is another case, another life they tried to erase. The investigation changes direction. Now it is not about a fire, not about an escape, but about a series of kidnappings that has spanned years. The investigators realize that everything they have found is only the beginning. The examination of the found photographs begins immediately. In the laboratory, each photo is scanned at high resolution to extract maximum detail. Reflections, background, items of clothing. Police experts work in gloves, frame by frame. This is not just an archive. It is a documentation of others' suffering, captured by someone with cold calculation. The first photos show a concrete room, cages, chains, metal beams. The same as in the basement on Maple Street. Other pictures show similar walls, but a slightly different layout. This means the Melnikovs may have had more than one location. When the photos are run through the missing persons database, the system yields the first matches. On 5 pictures are different faces. 2 men, 2 women, and Alexei, the survivor. Now the police know of at least 5 victims. And that is only what was captured on camera. All these people disappeared in different years, from different regions. No common links. Not a single point of intersection. One man is a car mechanic from a neighboring town. Another is a medical representative who disappeared on her way back from a business trip. A third is a student last seen on a highway, hitchhiking. All those cases were closed at the time with the conclusion, left voluntarily. The analysis continues. From one of the photos, the program finds a 100% match with a 4-year-old case. The picture shows a young woman, posed against a concrete wall, with a frozen gaze staring directly into the camera. Her name was Svetlana N., 22 years old. She disappeared while hitchhiking. The last signal from her phone was from a highway near Livinsk. Then, silence. Now it is clear. She did not disappear on her own. And the photographs are the last thing left of her. This discovery changes everything. If Svetlana disappeared in 2008 and Alexei appeared 2 years later, it means the Melnikovs were active for at least 4 years. During this time, they could have been kidnapping people in different places, moving around with Victor's job. A long-haul trucker who crosses dozens of cities is the perfect cover. No one remembers the faces of those who just pass by. Investigators assemble a timeline. Every match, every date, every city on the map. A frightening geography emerges. The Moscow region, Ryazan, Nizhny Novgorod, Oryol. In each of these regions, mysterious disappearances have been recorded in recent years. And now, a thin but clear link is being established between them. Meanwhile, forensic experts continue their work in the basement. They carefully examine the walls, bars, and chains. They collect microparticles, samples from the rust, and traces of biological fluids. Everything is sent for DNA analysis. The results come back in a week. On the chains and metal bars are dozens of different profiles. Male, female. Some match the people in the photographs, but there are also those that are unidentified. This means there were more victims than were captured in the pictures. The laboratory identifies at least 9 unique DNA profiles, not counting the survivor, Alexei. This places the investigation in a completely different context. Now it is not about isolated crimes, but about systematic activity stretched over time. The police officially declare the Melnikovs as suspects in a series of kidnappings. A separate investigative team is created for the case. A large-scale review of all missing person cases along the routes Victor might have traveled begins. The investigators realize they have only found the tip of what was really happening. Ahead of them lies the task of determining where the other locations were, who helped this couple, and how long they have been hiding. It is here that the story ceases to be just an investigation of one basement. It becomes the story of people who lived next to monsters for years and never noticed. Investigators begin to piece together what at first seemed absurd. How ordinary people with no criminal past could build an entire system, well thought out, long-lasting, and effective. The answer, strangely enough, lies in their professions. Victor is a long-haul truck driver, a job that gave him freedom of movement, a lack of supervision, and the ability to disappear for weeks. He could go anywhere, under any pretext, without arousing suspicion even among colleagues. In his truck, he essentially had his own isolated space. On the road, he met those who traveled alone, those who hitchhiked, trusted people, and just hoped to get a ride. He had everything: time, transport, and a familiarity with the road. No one tracked where he was taking people. Irina is a nurse. Her position gave her access to medical drugs that are impossible to obtain otherwise. She had knowledge of dosages, anesthetics, and how to affect the body without killing but subduing it. Investigators will later establish that many of the substances found in the house were listed as written off or disposed of at the institution where she worked. The signatures in the logbook match her handwriting. This means she not only knew what she was doing, she used her profession as a tool of control. The combination of a truck driver and a nurse turned out to be perfect for what they had planned. He brought them. She kept them. He ensured silence and isolation. She knew how to prolong the lives of those who, by all laws of nature, should not have survived. Their union was not just a marriage, but a partnership with a grim internal logic. Everything seemed planned, down to the smallest detail. When investigators began to analyze the location of their house, it became clear that even the choice of the plot was not accidental. The house stood at a dead end, the last one on the street, surrounded by a forest belt. On one side was a vacant lot, on the other, an abandoned construction site. The nearest neighbors were more than 200 meters away. Not a single scream, not a single sound from there could reach other houses. Even the dogs did not react. The wind blew through the trees, carrying away everything that happened inside. From the very beginning, the Melnikovs avoided attention. No one just dropped by. No one saw what they had under their house. They did not receive guests, did not invite relatives, and did not visit others themselves. This creates the illusion of reclusive, unsociable people. But now it is obvious. This was part of their security system. Their seclusion was not a personality trait, but a strategy. The house, built according to their plan, was not just a dwelling. It was a hideout. The investigation paints a picture. Victor could pick people up during his trips, take them home, and leave them in the basement. Irina monitored the guests' condition to ensure they did not die prematurely. It all looked like a sophisticated mechanism where each person played their part. But now that the house is destroyed, now that they are wanted, the investigation has only one source of information left. The one who survived. Alexei Kornev, the only person who saw them from the inside, remains in the hospital under medical supervision. His condition is gradually stabilizing. His body is exhausted, but his mind is clearing. The doctors allow limited contact. The investigators come again. He cannot speak. The damage to his vocal cords turned out to be irreversible. But now he reacts. He looks, nods, understands. Psychologists confirm His memory is partially intact, and he is aware of who he is and where he is. An investigator leaves a notepad and a pen on the bedside table. He cannot speak, but he can write. Alexei takes the pen, and for the first time in all this while, he grips it in his fingers. He sits for a long time, motionless. Then he makes a few uncertain lines. The first letters are uneven, almost illegible, but they already have meaning. This is not just text. It is a path to those who are still alive or hiding somewhere. Now, for the first time, the investigation has a chance not only to understand what was happening, but also to learn where to look for those who made it possible. Investigators began to reconstruct their route long before the fire. Any disappearance requires preparation, and the way the Melnikovs acted showed that everything was calculated in advance. When their financial and property transactions for the year before the fire were checked, the picture that emerged was almost mathematically precise. About 6 months before the arson, Victor sold a second car, an old station wagon that Irina used to drive to work. The deal was made through a private ad for cash. Not a single ruble was deposited into an account. The buyer turned out to be fictitious. The details were fake, and the phone number was disconnected immediately after the deal. Even then, the Melnikovs were beginning to dispose of their property without leaving a trace. 3 months after that, they closed all their credit cards, even the small ones, bonus cards, discount cards. The banks confirmed that the accounts were cancelled at the client's initiative, with no outstanding debt. It looked clean and calm, as if they were simply planning to move. A few weeks before the fire came the last transaction on their main account, the withdrawal of the entire sum in cash. After that, silence. Not a single transaction, not a single trace. It was as if they had erased themselves from the system. Investigators requested data from passport databases. They checked for applications at government service centers, migration services, and notary offices. Nothing. No applications for a name change. No attempts to get a new passport. No documents submitted for travel abroad. For fugitives of this level, this looked strange. It meant either they were using high-quality forged documents or they had found a way to live outside official channels. Their connections supported the second theory. As a long-haul trucker, Victor crossed regional borders dozens of times. He could have known routes where documents are not checked. And among drivers, there were always those who could help someone disappear for the right price. His old routes were preserved in police archives, long highways leading to southern regions where control is weaker and traffic is chaotic. Those who know how to get lost choose such paths. In parallel, the investigation does not move away from the main witness, Alexei. His condition has stabilized. He still cannot speak, but doctors have managed to achieve partial recovery of his hand motor skills. Investigators visit him again in his hospital room. On the bedside table lies the same notepad. Alexei stares at the page for a long time. His gaze does not focus on the people. It seems as if all his attention is concentrated inward. He takes the pen, pauses briefly, and writes the first word. The investigator expects a name, maybe a place, a surname, an address. But what appears on the paper throws them off their usual script. Just one word: Peterbilt. To most of those present, this means nothing. But an operative standing by the window immediately recognizes it. It is a brand of American truck. This type of vehicle was used in international freight transport, especially on long routes leading to ports and warehouses in the south. This is not a random word. Alexei has seen this brand before, perhaps on the vehicle he was brought in, or on a truck parked next to that house. From this moment, the investigation moves to a new level. Now the investigators know. The key to finding the Melnikovs is not in documents or banks. It is on the roads. In those hundreds of kilometers of highways where Victor once drove, where any truck could be hiding a person who long ago learned not to leave a trace. The first thing the investigators do is send an official inquiry to the transport company where Viktor Melnikov worked. They need to understand if there are any traces of his routes, refueling stops, or movements. The response comes 2 days later. The company confirms Victor was indeed employed by them as a long-haul truck driver for almost 8 years. He resigned exactly 1 week before the fire. The reason given was personal choice. Upon his departure, he returned the company truck and underwent an inventory check. There were no complaints from the employer. At first glance, everything is perfectly clean. It seems as if the man simply grew tired of the road and decided to start a new life. But in his personnel file, investigators notice a detail that changes the direction of the investigation. In the professional development section, there is an entry about a course on repairing old models of Peterbilt 379 trucks. He completed this course just a month before his resignation. Why would a truck driver working with modern equipment learn to fix obsolete vehicles that are no longer in production? The answer is obvious. If he was planning to go underground, he needed a vehicle he could maintain himself, without official service centers, without extra witnesses. The search begins. They check all vehicle registration databases: federal, regional, private. Nothing is registered to either Victor or Irina. No cars, no trucks. A complete zero. At first glance, it is a dead end. But the investigators already have experience. Such people do not just disappear. They know how to hide their tracks, forge documents, and use other people's names. The criminologists decide to check old archives for unusual coincidences, and they find something that should not exist. In one of the databases, there is a registration for an old decommissioned Peterbilt 379 year of manufacture, 1987. It is registered in the name of a woman with the surname Melnikova. A coincidence? No. It is the maiden name of Victor's mother, who died 20 years ago. This cannot be possible. A deceased person cannot register a vehicle. But the documents for the truck were issued in 2009. The signature matches a manual forgery. This means someone deliberately restored old data and re-registered the vehicle, using someone else's non-existent identity. This truck is their way of disappearing. A ghost truck. The license plate in the database is old but active. It is not listed as stolen, nor has it been deregistered, which means, theoretically, it can move freely on the roads. The investigation reaches a new level. All federal and regional services receive a bulletin. Search for a Peterbilt 379, green body, faded logo on the door, old registration number issued in the name of a deceased person. A photo of the truck found in the archive is distributed to all precincts, from the borders to the highways. The police activate the automatic license plate recognition system. Surveillance cameras on the highways capture millions of vehicles a day, but they only need one. One old truck that could have become a home for those hiding from justice. The search operation spans several states. Truck stops, repair stations, and private auto shops are checked. Information slowly trickles into the center. Several false alarms, dozens of similar trucks. And then, a signal. 4 days later, a message comes from Wyoming. A patrol on Interstate 80 stopped an old Peterbilt 379 with a similar number. At the wheel is a middle-aged man with documents in another person's name, but his appearance matches the description. In the trailer are old equipment, tools, and 2 diesel fuel canisters. Everything suggests that he was not just driving, but living in this vehicle. Now the investigation gets its first real lead. What seemed like a random word, written by the hand of a mute witness, turned out to be the key to the entire chain. Alexei did not just remember the truck. He pointed to the vehicle they might have been taken away in, and possibly to those who are still at large. The message from Wyoming arrives early in the morning. It contains a brief report from a patrol officer, but it is precisely such random observations that sometimes become the key to a capture. He writes that he saw an old green Peterbilt at a truck stop by a roadside cafe. The truck was parked off to the side, a little farther from the other vehicles. The license plate was smeared with dirt, but several numbers matched the bulletin. The driver was a man of medium height, unshaven, with a baseball cap pulled down over his eyes. Next to him, in the cabin, he noticed a woman writing something in a notebook. They were there for a short time, about 20 minutes, then left without stopping to refuel. When the patrol officer returned half an hour later, the truck was gone. It was not captured on any cameras or highway recorders. This is only possible in one case: if the driver immediately turned onto a dirt road where there are no surveillance cameras. For those who know how to stay off the radar, this is a familiar maneuver. This means they are not just traveling, they are moving deliberately, avoiding the systems. The investigation turns to Alexei again. His hand has grown stronger, his movements more confident. He can now write sentences. The detectives give him a new notebook. He takes his time. He writes slowly, carefully, as if filtering every word through his memory. First, simple details. Long silence. Metal. Light from below. Then, more specifics. He describes them as a couple who work in concert. The man was rough, followed orders. The woman was calm, composed. She decided what to do and when. She was the one who gave the injections. She was the one who determined when food could be given, or when it was time to finish. Her voice, he says, was always steady, without emotion. The strangest thing is that they never addressed each other by name. Not once. Alexei writes, they just said he and she. Even in everyday matters, no names. This is not just a detail. It is a system, a way to strip away the personal, to erase the human. Even between themselves, they remained figures, not people. These notes are given to experts. The FBI brings in a profiler to analyze the psychological dynamics of the couple. In his many years of practice, he has seen dozens of similar cases, criminal duos where one acts and the other directs. But here, he says, everything was structured with frightening logic. The woman is dominant, cold-blooded, possessing a gift for control. The man is the enforcer, dependent on her, emotionally subordinate. She makes the decisions, he does the dirty work. Together they form a closed system in which each knows their role and does not step outside its boundaries. The profiler notes that their behavior indicates not panic, but discipline. The escape is not chaos, but a carefully planned relocation. The house burned down, but their work continues. They are not running from the police. They have simply changed venues. According to him, such couples rarely change their habits. They choose new territories, farther from cities, closer to deserted places where no one asks unnecessary questions. The expert's final conclusion is alarming. This is not an escape. It is a relocation. They are not hiding. They are continuing. Their truck is a new home. Their route a new hunting ground. They are moving to where there are fewer people, where they can disappear among others like them. Loners of the road. This thought turns the entire investigation upside down. It is now clear that time is working against them. The farther they get, the less chance there is of finding them. All that remains is to follow their trail while it is still warm. A week after the tip from Wyoming, just as the trail was beginning to grow cold, a call comes into the Nebraska Police Department. The voice on the other end of the line sounds agitated but steady. He identifies himself as the owner of a small roadside motel, a middle-aged man named Richard Holmes. He says he saw the bulletin on TV for a couple wanted by federal authorities and recognized his recent guests. They checked in 2 days ago with no luggage, paid in cash, and did not show any identification. The man was tall, stooped, with a short beard. The woman was silent, wearing glasses, her hair tucked under a scarf. Richard notes that there was something wary in their eyes, as if they were constantly listening for something. They stayed in their room almost the entire time, only coming out at night. They left suddenly, without returning the key or waiting for morning. At first, it all sounds plausible, but there was one detail that threw the investigation off. Richard swears they arrived not in a truck, but in an old blue sedan, with no license plates. He even remembers that the windshield had a crack, and the rear bumper was held on with wire. This statement changes everything. If it is really the Melnikovs, it means they have changed vehicles. Maybe they abandoned the truck after realizing it was being sought. But if it is not them, then either someone is imitating them, or the coincidence is too strange. Detectives request the motel's surveillance camera footage. The video quality is poor, an old system, grainy image, night recording. But the outlines of the figures match. The height, the gait, even the manner of their movements. The woman walks first, turns back, makes a short gesture with her hand, exactly like Irina did in the footage from the old cameras found in their house. The man follows, carrying a bag. The investigation decides to pursue this lead. The information is passed through interstate wanted channels. The search for a blue sedan begins. All cameras on the highways are checked, and hundreds of hours of recordings are reviewed. Several times, a car with a similar description appears in different states, but each time it is a dead end. The license plates are unreadable. The driver's face is indistinguishable. 2 days later, a message comes from a patrol post in South Dakota. A blue sedan has been found on the shoulder of the highway 30 miles from Nebraska. The car is abandoned, the door is ajar, and the key is still in the ignition. Inside, there is the smell of cheap fuel, a couple of water bottles, and an old newspaper. Experts arrive at the scene. The car is searched thoroughly. There are no signs of blood, but there are fingerprints on the steering wheel and door handles. The samples are sent to the lab. A few hours of waiting, and a result that shatters their hopes. None of the fingerprints match Victor or Irina. These were different people. The coincidence turned out to be a simple trick of perception. The witness did not lie. He really did see a similar-looking couple, but they were not the ones being sought. Perhaps their strange appearance and behavior played a cruel trick. The police lose 2 days, dozens of hours, and hundreds of man-hours on a false lead. And in that time, the Melnikovs, if they are still on the move, could have gotten even farther away, deeper into the country, to a place where there are no cameras, no cell service, and not a single living soul for tens of kilometers. This episode was a cold shower for the investigation. It showed how easily one could lose direction in this case. Every new tip could turn out to be a phantom, but they still have one point of reference. The old green truck. And now, after the false lead, the investigation returns to it. Because as long as that Peterbilt is not found, the story is not over. When the false lead completely falls apart, the investigative team goes back to where it all began. After weeks of fruitless searches and dozens of useless tips, they realize they need to dig into the past again, but this time, deeper than ever before. Not just into documents, not into biographical records, but into what was left outside the official papers. Investigators re-examine everything: their medical records, tax returns, school archives, correspondence, photographs. Any small detail could be important. But the real clue comes when one of the analysts, a young archivist from the FBI, decides to check not only their documents, but also the papers of their relatives. First and foremost, Victor's mother, the same woman whose name he used to register the old truck. He finds her old will, drawn up almost 30 years ago and almost forgotten by everyone. The document looks ordinary. A house, personal belongings, small savings. But there is one line that gets an instant reaction from the investigators. Among the items listed is, "And I also bequeath to my son the ownership of a plot of land located in Gallatin County, Montana." At first glance, it is nothing special. But when it comes to fugitives, any word associated with an isolated place becomes important. Gallatin County is mountains, dense forests, dozens of kilometers without cell service or roads. And if someone wants to disappear from the face of the earth, Montana is the perfect place. Investigators make a request to the Land Registry Archive. The answer comes a day later. The plot really exists. The area is more than 5 hectares. It is registered to Viktor Melnikov, has not been sold or leased, and property taxes have not been paid for the last 12 years. There is no address in the documents, only GPS coordinates. Satellite images show overgrown forest, a barely discernible dirt track leading somewhere up toward the cliffs. No houses or buildings nearby. A check shows that the nearest town is a tiny settlement with a population of fewer than 100 people. From there, the plot can only be reached by an off-road vehicle. No electricity, no running water, no mobile phone signal. Now everything falls into place. Their movement from Wyoming, their direction, their choice of route. It all aligns with the road leading to Montana. This means it is not just a random coincidence, but a planned route. Perhaps that is where they have been heading all this time. And what is especially important, none of the neighbors or local residents even knew that this land belonged to anyone. After a meeting, the leadership decides it is time to change strategy. The broad scattered search is called off. Now all attention, all forces, and all resources are focused on one point. Montana, the mountains, an abandoned plot of land that no one had remembered for almost 2 decades. A federal team of operatives heads there under the guise of surveyors. They will have to ascend old roads, through passes and ravines. According to satellite images, at the foot of the mountain, something like a structure is visible, hidden under the canopy of trees. Perhaps a house, perhaps a hangar. Each of the investigators understands. If the Melnikovs are really there, they prepared for this in advance. This means the place is fortified, well thought out, and dangerous. But they will not get another chance. It is there, among the mountains and the wind, that this story, which began in the ashes of a quiet suburb, may finally come to an end. The planning shifted into a practical phase. All the information gathered so far was condensed into a single dossier, brief but dangerous, on which the success of the raid depended. The investigators reviewed it more than once. At the hospital, this took the form of a series of short, organized visits. An operational tactics specialist, a forensic expert, a psychologist, a translator for written cues, and the attending physician. They all came with one goal: to get from the mute witness what documents and satellite images could not provide. The room was adapted. A table with a large map, markers, a desk lamp, clean sheets of paper. He could still only write and draw. His handwriting was slow but clear. First, he wrote down a few words that shattered the calm in the room. Weapons. Many. Then more specifically, rifle. Pistols. 2 boxes of ammunition. He did not specify the models or caliber, but he indicated the presence of both long firearms and handguns. This meant that the team would face armed resistance upon approach, which would be prepared and well supplied with ammunition. Next was the schedule. He slowly wrote. He sleeps during the day. She, at night. Someone is always on watch. These 3 short phrases became the most valuable tactical guide. A behavioral analysis expert immediately explained their significance. A routine where shifts are organized on a daily cycle speaks to discipline, a well thought out perimeter defense, and the skill to distribute guard duties. These are not spontaneous criminals acting on impulse. This is a structure that needs to be broken at the right time and in the right way. He also pointed out an architectural detail that the investigation had previously expected but could not confirm. A basement. There is always a basement. One sector on the maps was immediately marked as a priority. Basements are not just shelters. They contain many hidden spaces, partitions and niches that make it easier to hide people and evidence. For the operatives, this meant that the entrances to the house had to be controlled especially tightly, minimizing the chance that the suspects could go down and hide in underground cells. His notes were accompanied by small sketches. He carefully drew the approximate layout of the lower floor: a door, a corridor, stairs, several locked cells. The forensic experts noted the marks where chain fastenings would be and the non-functional ventilation shafts that he frantically hinted at through the diagram. Based on these leads, the first sketches of possible floor plans and the distribution of guards inside the building were drawn up. The medics monitored his physical condition: weakened hands, tremors, uneven writing, old scars on his throat. The doctor's report stated that he could withstand a short period of physical exertion for writing, but his testimony had to be recorded quickly and correctly. Meanwhile, the psychologist analyzed the essence of what was written. The last words, "Find the others," were read by the doctor and the investigator as a key. This was not a panic demand, not an emotional outburst. It was a purposeful message from the witness. He was thinking about those who might still be in the basement rooms, and he spoke of it primarily as a duty. The technical team immediately incorporated his instructions into the operational model. The map of the Montana property was overlaid with satellite imagery, road networks, and the range of cell towers. The approach routes were planned to minimize the time the approaches to the building would be visible from the road. They took into account the guard changes he had indicated and identified windows of vulnerability, periods when one of them was asleep and the other, according to his notes, might be dozing. The entry attempt was planned for these windows while preparing reserves in case the calculation proved wrong. The team's armament was also discussed. Mixed groups were formed, units to control the perimeter, an entry team for a rapid clearing of the living quarters, and a separate group prepared to provide safe access to the basement. Medics and rescuers developed evacuation plans for any potential individuals found inside. A signaling communication system was developed, taking into account the lack of coverage in the mountains and the risk of radio interception. Observation posts, night vision devices, and resources for operating in cold, wild terrain were prepared. The legal department processed all the paperwork: permits, warrants, coordination with federal and local services. The operation required the coordination of many agencies, and all of this was consolidated into a single plan with clearly assigned roles and backup options. In parallel, forensic experts worked with the lists of people in the Polaroid photos found in the safe in order to quickly cross-reference data in the event of a successful clearing of the premises. The profiler provided another important assessment. He said that the couple's strategy, mobility and isolation, was their strength. They choose places where they can hide and set up facilities far from prying eyes. Their relationship with each other and the distribution of roles, a dominant woman and an enforcer man, strengthen their resilience. This means that any attempts at physical contact must be extremely calculated. First, neutralize the external threat, then work with internal teams. But the priority remains unchanged: the search for potential victims and their rescue. The words, "Find the others," which he wrote at the end, instantly transformed the nature of the upcoming operation. It was no longer just a police special operation to catch fugitives. It became a mission to save people and restore justice for those who might still be in the underground. Every planning document now began with this requirement, and all resources were directed to minimize the time people spent in the danger zone and maximize the chance of finding them alive. The operational headquarters finished preparations as morning broke. Paper maps were replaced by tablets. The latest tactical developments were added to the route sheets, and the teams received their equipment and evacuation instructions. Given his testimony about weapons and underground rooms, the team was instructed to act quickly and in a coordinated manner, avoiding reckless risks while not losing a single minute in the search for possible victims. With these written instructions from the survivor, the plan became clear and unambiguous. His request gave the operation a moral and practical impetus, turning the preparation into a rescue mission. At dawn, the team moved out toward the Montana property, fully prepared for what awaited them under the cover of the mountains and forest. A warm signal from the drone turned preparation into an undeniable fact. What had previously been a hypothesis and circumstantial evidence was now visually confirmed. On the mountain property, there was indeed a house, and next to it, a Peterbilt truck wrapped in a tarp. This was the moment when intelligence ceased to be guesswork and became a concrete, tangible target for the operation. The team acted with clear sequencing. First, covert reconnaissance. The drone circled the perimeter, thermally scanning the facade, roof, and basement area. The operatives received footage clearly showing two bright heat spots in the upper part of the house and a faint but consistently repeating heat signature below, in the basement. On-site analysts assessed the signals as 2 adult individuals and 1 fading heat source, meaning a high risk of a person being present in the underground room. The presence of the Peterbilt next to the house confirmed the suspect's original route and left no doubt. They were on site, and the time for deliberation was shrinking to a minimum. The commander consolidated all the information into a brief tactical briefing. The decision was based on 3 factors: confirmation of the suspect's presence, confirmation of a possible hostage in the basement, and the fact that the area was remote. Delaying action increased the risks for anyone inside. Negotiations in such circumstances were considered a low effectiveness option. The perpetrators had shelter, weapons, and time to prepare for resistance. The command made a tactical decision to proceed with an immediate assault to minimize the window in which unpredictable events could occur. The assault plan was simple and pragmatic. 3 main groups were formed. 1. Perimeter suppression group, tasked with blocking possible escape routes, establishing visual control over the road and coordinating with patrol posts, monitoring the entrances to the valley. This group was to cut off all external communications and prevent any third parties from entering the operation zone. 2. Entry group, a multifunctional assault team prepared for a lightning-fast entry into the residential part of the house. They were tasked with the primary clearing of the upper floor, where 2 heat contacts were detected. Their arsenal included rapid entry tools, flashbang grenades for a temporary neutralizing effect, and equipment for controlling corridors. 3. Basement access group, a separate unit, equipped to work in confined spaces and outfitted for the safe retrieval of people from underground. Its task was to immediately secure the detected heat signal in the basement and prepare for evacuation. This group had stretchers, medical supplies, and portable heating ready, considering the possible condition of the hostage. Additionally, sniper positions were established for observing the outer perimeter and controlling the airspace, along with a medical team at the base, ready to receive and stabilize those found. All communication operated on an encrypted channel, with a minimal radio signature established to prevent the suspects from intercepting coordination. Before the assault, the commander once again outlined the action scenarios in case of possible resistance. If open aggression occurred on the upper floor, the entry group was to quickly contain the threat and advance toward the stairs, ensuring a safe descent for the basement access group. If the suspects attempted to hide or destroy possible evidence, the priority remained the rescue of the person below. This requirement was placed above the confiscation of property or a clean arrest. Technical specialists prepared additional tools: thermal imaging links to monitor the dynamics of the signals during the assault, portable ramps to quickly block doors, and a set of tools for opening hidden hatches, should any be found. Forensic experts were instructed to immediately document any found Polaroid elements and any items that could link the suspects to previous incidents. Lawyers on site had court orders with them, and federal coordinators ensured information exchange with neighboring states in case the suspects tried to flee after the incident. It was the confirmation of the heat signal in the basement that became the irrefutable proof from which there was no turning back. It immediately changed the tone of the operation. From tentative reconnaissance and searching, the investigation shifted to rescue and arrest. The commander gave the order for immediate execution. The dawn's silence was broken by the coordinated movement of the squads. The radio went silent, and a red marker appeared on the operation map. Entry. This marker signified the end of the preparatory phase and the beginning of the active one. All elements of the plan, refined by the survivors' testimony and confirmed by technology, merged into one. The team began the assault to bring to light those who had been hidden below for years. The assault began with the same calculated restraint that had characterized the entire preparation. The Special Forces soldiers moved into position under the cover of pre-dawn darkness. Communications operated on short channels. No one said anything unnecessary, only brief commands and confirmations. The entry team approached the front door. The engineering squad prepared tools for breaching. The basement access team took up positions near the hatch, and snipers covered the exits. Everything proceeded according to the plan that had been drawn up based on analysis of the thermal maps and the survivors' testimony. The door breach was quick. Flashbang grenades created an opening. The squad stormed in and began clearing the upper floor. The situation developed rapidly. The perpetrators returned fire, but their resistance was short-lived. Tactical training and the element of surprise worked. The firefight lasted only a few minutes. As a result of the entry team's actions, the suspects were neutralized and taken out of the fight. These actions allowed for the cessation of further armed confrontation and a shift in focus to the main objective, the basement and whoever was down there. Simultaneously with the clearing of the living area, the access team, led by an experienced sapper, descended into the basement. The basement greeted the operators with familiar signs from the ruins of the previous location. Concrete walls with traces of welded fixtures, chains, and noticeable signs of people being held in cramped conditions for a long time. The structure was well thought out. Separate cells, simple but effective means of restraint. In one of the sections, they discovered a cage disguised as a utility corner. Inside lay an emaciated but living female hostage. Medics attended to her immediately. Her face showed signs of prolonged malnutrition and dehydration. Her hands were bound, but her breathing was steady. The first procedures, checking vital signs, carefully freeing her from her restraints, covering her with a warm blanket, and administering water through a nasal tube if necessary, were performed right in the basement to prepare the woman for transport. By the time of evacuation, the hostage's condition allowed her to be moved to a safe location for initial treatment. Her rescue became the top priority. Medics accompanied the transport, while forensic experts immediately began documenting the scene. Photographs, video recordings, measurements of distances within the room, and collection of biological and physical evidence. Every detail mattered, from the prints on the chains to the marks of straps on the walls and shelves with items that could link the location to other incidents. As for the suspects, their neutralization was documented and recorded in accordance with the relevant protocols. The operatives described the circumstances under which the opponents lost their ability to continue resisting. All actions by law enforcement were conducted in compliance with the rules of engagement and the safety of personnel and civilians. After they were removed from the combat zone and initially stabilized, investigative teams and medical examiners arrived on the scene to record and document the results of the operation, as well as to prepare the materials necessary for further criminal prosecution. The investigative work on the property continued intensively. Forensic experts systematically searched the house and the surrounding area. In a safe that had survived the fire, they found the same Polaroid pictures previously noted in another part of the case. They were seized, sealed, and sent to the laboratory for further attribution. In addition to the photographs, they found records, household items, medications, and syringes that allowed them to reconstruct the methods of control over the hostages. All of this was compiled as evidence, protocols, inventories, and supporting documentation to ensure no detail was missed. The operation was also coordinated with federal agencies. Information about the found truck, the evidence, and the previously identified missing persons was sent to national databases. Investigators initiated urgent requests to missing persons databases and forensic laboratories for DNA material collection. An important task was to establish a link between the found materials and the cases that suggested this couple's activity over the past few years. Comparisons were initiated with DNA samples found in other locations, as well as with missing persons databases. The finale of the operation, as reported by the commander on site, was clear in its results. The suspects were eliminated as an immediate threat. The hostage was rescued and handed over to medics. The crime scene was secured, and key evidence was seized and sent for examination. This marked the end of one major stage of the investigation, the long search period, and the transition to the next. The next phase included forensic examination, the search for other possible victims from the entire list of found materials, and preparation for legal proceedings against those involved in organizing these crimes. The operation concluded with the completion of the priority task, rescuing a person and preventing further crimes by the now liquidated group. The materials from the scene were handed over to the investigation. The focus of the work shifted from immediate tactics to the systematic and lengthy stage of evidence collection and legal processing of the case. When the survivor's voice returned, the investigation got what it had been missing for years. He underwent several surgeries, partially recovered his speech, and his first official testimony became the basis for reconstructing that evening and all of the criminal's subsequent actions. It was not an emotional monologue. It was a dry chronology, laid out point by point, like a report from an eyewitness who had seen the system from the inside. In the first minutes of his testimony, he reported on the practices that had previously been only speculation and circumstantial evidence. He detailed the methods: sleep deprivation, prolonged periods of starvation, constant disorientation, alternating light and darkness, arbitrary changes in the daily rhythm. He explained that they were deliberately prevented from orienting themselves in time, that every action had a purpose, not to cause immediate harm, but to break the will. These words matched the forensic data. In the underground rooms, they found signs of systematic immobilization, medications showing signs of long-term use, and evidence of people being restrained for periods of time. All of this became a single body of facts, confirmed both physically and by the eyewitnesses' words. He emphasized one detail that, in his opinion, was central to understanding the couple's motivation. The criminals did not act impulsively and were not driven by direct material gain. Every deprivation was calculated. Every method was aimed at the same thing: to erase the personality. He explained that initially it seemed like punishment for a misdeed, then like an experiment on reactions. Gradually, the goal began to change, not just to subdue, but to turn a person into an instrument. It was this psychological component, the process of systematic suppression, that became key. At the very center of his testimony was a phrase that formed the basis for the investigations and the experts' assessment of motives. They didn't kill right away. They needed you to understand that you were alive, but no longer human. This formulation, delivered in a steady voice, provided a clear and terrifying interpretation of all the found materials. Now the investigation had not only a technical reconstruction of the methods and a schedule of their actions, but also an understanding of the deep-seated stimulus, the desire for absolute control, and the creation of a state of complete dependency and loss of identity in the victim. Comparing his words with the evidence from both houses, photographs, notes, marks on the walls and chains, and found medical supplies, allowed several theories to be ruled out. This was not a common criminal story focused on ransom or sexual exploitation. No evidence of systematic financial gain or commercial activity surrounding the events was found. Instead, a picture emerged of an organized process of humiliation and suppression, of turning people into objects of an experiment in power. Legally and operationally, this had a strict consequence. The evidence base became even more solid. The eyewitnesses' words confirmed a motive that had previously been at the level of speculation. For the investigation, this meant a shift in focus, from exploring theories of material gain to modeling and identifying other cases where similar methods were used. The experts received new requests: a psychological attribution of the criminal's behavior, an analysis of the long-term effects of deprivation methods on the psyche, and a comparison of these patterns with other unsolved cases. The survivor's conclusion became a turning point. It transformed a collection of disparate clues into a coherent chain of meaning. The motive ceased to be an abstraction. Now the investigation understood that it was dealing with a system, purposeful and methodical. In the future, this would determine not only the course of interrogations and examinations, but also the entire strategy for uncovering other incidents, identifying local analogues of such practices, checking medical workers and truck drivers in similar regions, and analyzing materials that might have been destroyed in the house fires. This conclusion became the bridge to the next stage of the case: a systematic review of all discovered connections and the preparation of materials for the final classification of the acts. After the raid, the case was handed over to the prosecutor's office, and no longer to prove anyone's guilt. The guilty parties were eliminated at the time of their capture. The task of the investigators and lawyers was now different: to formally close the investigation, give the case legal finality, and determine its future. The materials collected over the years represented a voluminous array: expert reports, witness testimonies, forensic medical conclusions, documents and photo and video evidence. All of this required systematization and evaluation. The official position of the prosecutor's office was strict and dry. There was no one to sentence. A judicial procedure against the deceased is impossible, and in accordance with the law, the case was closed due to the death of the accused. This is the procedure, legally flawless, but emotionally empty. For many of the officers involved in this investigation, this decision sounded like a formality, like a period placed not on a page, but somewhere in mid-air, because what they had seen could not be closed with a single signature. However, despite the formal conclusion, the work continued. The FBI created a separate working group that took on the task left unfinished: the identification of those in the photos from the found Polaroids and in the biological samples from the two houses. Now the investigation was no longer a hunt for criminals. It had become an attempt to give back names to those who had been deprived of even that. The investigators returned to the details again and again. They used archives of missing persons, records of travelers, and reports filed in different years from neighboring states. Much of it came down to the fact that the people who fell into this couple's hands were often outside the system. They had no permanent residence, no relatives, or no one who would continue to search for them. This complicated everything. Then new methods were brought into play: comparative DNA analysis, cross-reference databases from different regions, and appeals to the relatives of the missing. Every sample was checked. Every match was re-verified. The process took years. Dozens of archival cases were studied, and old samples that previously lacked the technology to be analyzed were extracted and re-examined. Gradually, results began to appear. First, they managed to identify a woman found in one of the photos, a traveler who disappeared in 2018. Her story received a conclusion, although it brought little comfort to anyone. Then several years later, DNA analysis helped identify another person, a man who was listed as missing in another state. These were small victories, but each one returned a name, a life, a fate to the world. The other faces remained a mystery. In the archives hung undeciphered photographs, strange coincidences, and fragmentary connections. Some people, presumably depicted in the photos, were never found, and their trails were lost thousands of kilometers apart from each other. Over time, the investigation began to resemble the process of restoring a picture from scattered fragments, where half of the pieces are irretrievably lost. And yet, it mattered. Every established fact, every confirmed identity became an act of justice for those who had been erased from life without a trace. Legally, the case is closed. Operationally, it has been brought to an end. But in the FBI archives, there are still files marked unidentified. This is its finale. Unseen, without loud sentences, without applause. Just silence and a few names returned to the world from the darkness. After the official closure of the case, all attention from investigators, journalists, and the public shifted to those who were left to live. Chief among them was the man who had been through the very heart of this nightmare, the first survivor. His story became the central thread of the entire investigation, the one voice that could speak to the internal logic of what had transpired in the house where it all began. After surgery, numerous therapy courses, and months in a clinic, he gradually returned to life. First, he learned to speak again. Then he reaccustomed himself to people. He was monitored by specialists, not only doctors, but also psychologists, neuropsychiatrists, and staff from the Witness Protection Program. His identity was changed in official records, and information about his new place of residence was classified. The state provided him not just with security, but with the opportunity to disappear completely from public view. Those who worked with him said that he rarely spoke of the past, and only when he felt it was necessary. At some point, he stopped responding to letters from journalists and withdrew from the public sphere entirely. According to some reports, he changed his name and lives under a different identity in a small town. Investigators noted that his story became the foundation for changing certain FBI protocols related to the search for missing persons and the classification of kidnappings. His experience became the basis for several training programs for operatives, and his written testimony is still cited in materials on criminal psychology. The other survivor, the one who was freed during the operation in Montana, chose a completely different path. Unlike the first, she did not hide, but on the contrary made her story public. After a long rehabilitation, she began collaborating with psychologists and participated in programs to help people who had survived kidnapping and long-term captivity. Over time, she became a well-known activist, one of those who advocate for improving the notification system for missing persons. In a rare interview, she said that what she fears most is not the past, but oblivion. That the faces of those who were not found would not disappear from memory forever. She now runs a charitable foundation that helps victims in similar situations adapt and return to life. Meanwhile, the geography of the case itself began to gradually disappear. The house in Tennessee, where it all started, was demolished by order of the authorities. Now there is a vacant lot, overgrown with grass, and only satellite images hint at the outlines of the foundation. The plot in Montana, where the story concluded, was confiscated by the state. After long debates, the land was transferred to local authorities, and now a small memorial sign stands there, without names, without dates, just a short inscription. In memory of those who were not found. It was a compromise, without attracting attention, without tourists, but with respect for the tragedy. The photographs found in the safes and the DNA analysis materials are stored in a secure FBI database. They are updated as new technologies emerge, comparing samples with newly received ones from regional laboratories. Occasionally, a match comes in. A new name, a new story, and another page of this dark chronicle is finally closed. But most of those faces remain nameless, their stories dissolved into the endless roads, gas stations, motels, and lost routes. In official reports, the case is listed as closed, but in practice, it lives on. In programs, initiatives, documents, and in the memory of those who participated in the investigation. Each of them understood. This was not just a crime story, but a reflection of the vulnerability of a society in which a person can disappear without a trace if a warning sign is not noticed in time. This story left behind not only a case file, but also a sense of incompleteness. The names of some victims have still not been restored, and the faces in the old Polaroid pictures continue to await their identifiers. An investigation may be closed, but the search never is. Every time a new match appears in the national database, someone, somewhere, receives a call. A relative has been found, a match has been confirmed, a final period has been placed. And each time, it is a reminder that even after years, justice can return, even if only in the form of a name brought back to the world from oblivion.